Okay, I'm Madhavi Murty, Assistant Professor in the Feminist Studies Department, and it's my pleasure today to introduce one of our alums, Sarah Elkotbeid. Sarah graduated from UCSC in 2018 with a double major in feminist studies and environmental studies. Her concentration in the feminist studies major was in culture, power, and representation, and her concentration in environmental studies was in sustainable food systems and agroecology. Sarah is now a program coordinator with the Natural Resources Defense Council, which is an environmental nonprofit that works to ensure the rights of all people to clean air, clean water, and healthy communities. She works out of San Francisco, and her focus is on NRDC's People and Communities program. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Uh, could you talk a little bit more about the work that you do at NRDC?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I'm a program coordinator at NRDC, and I work on various projects, specifically focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector. So, one of the projects is called the American Cities Climate Challenge, where we work with various national partners and local partners to help 25 US city governments, their Department of Transportations or sustainability offices, reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. And so I focus on transportation with my team, and then there's also buildings and energy. And then another project I work on is called the Delivering Zero Emissions Communities, where we focus specifically on urban freight, so medium to heavy duty vehicles, and transitioning those to zero emissions.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's also some internal projects that I work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is where I've plugged myself into with my feminist studies background. And yeah, there's multiple things happening at NRDC that I'm a part of. And yeah, I can that's the gist of it.
That's that's terrific and such important work, and so important for this particular moment, right?
Right.
Tell us a little bit, Sarah, about what made you decide to major in feminist studies at UCSC.
Yeah, I think mainly my background as an immigrant. I came to the United States as a 6-year-old with parents who were, born outside of the country, and my family was also very religious.
Mm.
So I really saw the gender binary and norms playing out in front of me and my household. And I remember my dad; he would always say, like, God is first, then it's the husband, and then it's the wife. And I remember one of my first original thoughts being like, yeah, no, like I don't agree with that, and that kind of really started my journey. I started reading articles online,
Mm.
frequenting like feminist websites like Everyday Sexism,
Mm.
watching YouTube videos about sexism in video games because I played a lot of video games as a kid. So really just anywhere that kind of I had access to, that was what I looked into and I read about.
Mhm.
And yeah, so when I got to Santa Cruz, it was actually the only sure thing I knew I wanted to do. I was like, I know I want to do feminist studies. I didn't know what else, but that was the only sure thing I knew I wanted to do.
That's such a wonderful story. I mean, and that really is so wonderful in the sense it's so relevant to how we teach feminist studies too, right?
Mm,
That
yeah.
it really is the field, is the aim is to make sense of our own particularities, our
Yes.
own everyday lives, right?
Right.
And the worlds within which we are positioned. So how did the relationship with the family evolve and grow? Did they get interested in feminist studies too?
Uh, I think I was always the outsider in my family for a long time. I think now it's much better, but definitely I don't think that switch happened until after college.
Uh-huh.
So it was a while because I didn't have the best way to communicate, what I thought or how I felt. So uh, definitely I was just always butting heads
Right.
with it. Yeah.
Um, so how do you think being a feminist studies major, because you were a double major,
Mhm.
how has it how did it influence your professional goals? And how did the major help you achieve these professional goals, or at least some of them? You're very young, so you have, many more goals ahead of you.
Yeah.
How has it influenced your career?
Yeah, no, I think it's 100% influenced my career because I always knew whatever it is that I chose to do, that it would be meaningful in the way that I want to feel that I'm helping and improving people's lives. And specifically the most vulnerable people, who are often women of color, low income people. And so in the environmental field, that often is environmental justice communities who are experiencing environmental racism, and really centering those people who have been historically overburdened by pollution, and yeah, environmental racism. So in my field, I wanted to weigh in into a prestigious organization like NRDC, but then I was like, all right, how am I going to fit in social justice into everything that we're doing? And in the field, we call it equity. In academia, it's social justice, but it's so yeah, that's how I've really kind of done all of my work and everything that I'm involved in. I always say, what does the community think about this? Who are we serving? What are the benefits to the communities that need it the most? And I think that has really kind of been a little bit of an agitator in a lot of ways, but in a really good way. And with the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, it kind of like opened up everybody's minds to thinking that way. So I definitely see myself continuing down that path within the environmental field, and really going deep on that.
That's terrific. What was your favorite feminist studies course?
Yes, I definitely have one. I loved Marxism as a Method with Professor Sarah Benson. She was great. I just remember really learning about power and capitalism and how we are interacting with the economy in a way. And so I remember learning about, overconsumption and really just like how people use that to like self-gratify and self-care, but really no, and then I remember learning about like the three faces of power, which I think were like having like ideological power over, setting the agenda. And then it was like, you can't express your grievances for the second phase of power. I think it was, the power gives you the runaround if you're trying to say something. Don't take my word for this. This is coming from college, so I need to brush up on it. But and then I think it was like decision-making power, right? Who's the final deciders? And I just in my everyday life, like I notice these things when they're happening. Like if I'm on the phone with somebody trying to, like a major corporation trying to get somebody to answer, but they keep, like a simple, example, they keep making you click all the different numbers to finally get a voice on the phone. That's the runaround, they have the power and they can set the agenda. Really. Then when you look at politics, it's really obvious too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I loved that class.
No,
I would take it again every day. Yeah.
Terrific that you remember so much of, what you learned.
I kept all of my test materials and everything, and sometimes I flip through them.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. I mean, that is, that's so heartening for any professor, any faculty member to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what would you say was the most important thing you learned in the feminist studies major, as a feminist studies major?
Yeah. I actually learned this in your class. I remember. It really clicked with me. It was gender and post-coloniality, right?
Yeah.
It really clicked with me that the struggle is violence. That phrase I'd heard a lot, but it never clicked. I never really got it because it didn't feel intuitive. Like, what does that mean? So it really clicked with me in that class. And I just feel like every day that we struggle, if we come, from marginalized community of some sort, that is violence inflicted upon us, from actors that are invisible in a way. And so I think it really justifies people's frustration and anger. And if they're, not reacting in the way that's as legal or easy to understand, like, well, you might not be doing something directly to this person, but they are still experiencing violence from the systems that we're living in, just because of the conditions that they're forced to be in. So that it was amazing. I remember writing it down on my shoe, which is like such a college thing to do, but just like looking at that every day and being like, wow, and coming from an environmental justice community myself, and just, low income, community, I really felt it hard, right? Like, wow, yeah, we go through it.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Well, that's a terrific insight, Sarah. And that to take that away from that class, that's
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you, because you definitely like drove it home, and it was like, oh wow, yeah.
No, that's great. That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
What is this? You've shared so much. This has been such a lovely conversation. Is there anything additionally that you would want to share with UCSC Feminist Studies students?
Yeah. I think this is maybe applicable to students in general, but definitely for feminist studies students as well. I feel like academia can sometimes be really rich in knowledge, but also very theoretical. And I remember struggling when I graduated, thinking, I love feminist studies. How am I going to apply it? I didn't have that like clear connection made on my own, and it took me a while to make it. And so it was definitely very helpful that I had my double major. And I know that most feminist studies students do double majors anyway. But just definitely, a good advice is making sure that whatever that double major is, like you're taking everything you're learning in feminist studies and you're applying it there, and you're trying to change whatever field that is for the better, because every field needs it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the advice I give.
That's great. And I think you've hit on actually one of the key questions, sometimes concerns that many students raise. That it appears some of the discussions appear too theoretical, perhaps.
Yeah, it's difficult, I think, when you're so young, because you don't know what the world is, right? Like you don't know what jobs look like, or how it actually works in the day-to-day work life. So it's kind of abstract, and
exactly
got to go through it to get it.
Yeah. But one of the and what you've also hit on is precisely one of the stakes of feminist studies, which is that we don't want to, these are issues that we shouldn't just marginalize, minoritize into one corner, right? That they are relevant to every single job,
every single job,
every single field that you might be engaged with. Yeah. That's great, Sarah. Thank you so much for making time.
Of course. It was so great to talk to you again.
Yeah, it was wonderful to reconnect.
Yeah.